Hello. I have a short list of videos that I need to make. I've been procrastinating for a while for a number of reasons, and it's time to get back on the horse and start putting some stuff out. Uh, these videos from here on out, some of them are just going to sound insane. This one I'm about to do, it should be pretty normal, and I'm going to do my best to substantiate it from the scriptures so that you know exactly why I'm saying the things that I'm saying. And some of the videos that I'm going to put out going forward are going to be increasingly bizarre, but well, like I said, I'll try to substantiate them to the best of my ability from the scripture and other related sources. So this video is about, I've posted this in various places over the last several, well, really months, I guess, at this point. And I've made some videos to this effect telling people that these rapture dreams of a September Feast of Trumpets were not correct, that the rapture absolutely was not going to happen in September during the Feast of Trumpets. And there's a reason I can say that with certainty, and the reason's a scriptural one, and I'm going to show you. We're just going to reconstruct my thought process on this so that you'll see the justification for why I say these things. And so I'm going to say in this video, to start things off, and I'm going to title this video to this effect, the rapture is not going to happen in the year 2025. The rapture is not going to happen in 2026. It's not going to happen in 2027. And it's not going to happen in 2028. Now there will be an event, the event that starts the tribulation period. And once that event happens, it's like the countdown timer of the tribulation period starts, and we can know from that point on to the day when the rapture will take place. And now I know you guys have been taught a certain interpretation of certain verses in the scriptures. Oh, well, I didn't think anyone except for the Father knew the timing of some of these things, and so forth. We're going to talk about all this in this video. I'm going to reconstruct my thought process from the scriptures so you can see it for yourselves. Here's where we're going to start, though. So we're going to go to Daniel. And in Daniel, we have this very specific timeline set up down to the days. So it says here, Daniel 12:11, from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So let's just work this out. 1, 2, 9, 0. 1,290 days. And we'll just go ahead and draw a little thing. Nope. There's a better way to do this, I'm pretty sure. Control click. Nope. Shift click. Nope. Alright, let's figure this out here. A line. We just need a line. There we go. That's our 1,290 days. And then this down here is our other one, which we'll see in just a little bit. Okay. So 1,290, and we're going to divide that by 365 just so we can see where that is relative to a year. Oh look, it's about 3.5 years. Okay. Interesting. So 1,290. And then let's continue here. So that is from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away to the time that the abomination of desolation takes place. 1,290 days. But blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. So 1,335. Okay, so 1,335 minus 1,290. What does this give us? It gives us 45 days. So there's a difference between these two of 45 days. So here's our picture so far. So we've got taking away the sacrifices until the abomination of desolation. But then blessed is he that makes it to the 1335 day mark. So here's what we're looking at. So we have an event, we have another time span of 45 days bounded by events. And let's just go ahead and put in some, so this is about 3.5 years. Let's kind of fill in some stuff. Alright, we got 45 days. It's this little period over here. And then we have these events. I'm just going to put X's for the events. And the Bible outright tells us what some of these events are. Now notice we have a span here of approximately 3.5 years. What is that? Well, that's half of our 7-year tribulation period. Alright, so now we've got to ask the question, so which half of the tribulation is this? Is this the first half of the tribulation? Or is this the second half of the tribulation? And let's just say that this down here is our tribulation period. And the whole thing, 7-year tribulation. So where does this approximately 3.5 years go? Does it go in the first half? Or does it go in the second half? Well, let's first put in these events and see what they are. So this is the cessation of daily sacrifices. The taking away, they stop. The daily sacrifices stop. Then we have the abomination, I'm going to capitalize it, of desolation. This is when the Antichrist goes into a rebuilt temple, claims to be God, desecrates the temple. And we were just told from Daniel the time span between these, 1,290 days. And then we were just told, blessed is he who makes it to the 1,335 days. So this is a blessed event. Now where does this 3.5 years go? Well, I would argue that based on other stuff in the scriptures, it goes here at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. So that would mean that the start of the 7-year tribulation is when the sacrifices stop, the daily sacrifices stop, and then that would put this blessed event and the abomination of desolation approximately in the middle of the tribulation. What blessed event could possibly happen in the middle of the tribulation? Well, the only blessed event that I can think of that would happen during that time frame would be the rapture. The catching away of the saints. Now, I am always having people in comment sections telling me there's no such thing as a rapture. So let's look at that real quick. Because I want to substantiate these things, at least give you a little bit of a framework, some verses to look at and stuff like that. Here we go. The coming of the Lord. This is from 1 Thessalonians 4:13-18. So in the early church, there were these misconceptions about a lot of stuff. At the end of the Gospel of John, let's actually rewind there and hit that real quick. At the end of the Gospel of John, Jesus tells Peter what his fate's going to be. And so Peter then is like, well, so he turns, he looks to the beloved disciple, that's John. And John, this is in John's Gospel, the end of John's Gospel. So Peter's just gotten some bad news about how he's going to be martyred for his faith. And so he turns and looks at John and says, well, what's this guy's fate? And Jesus says to him, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. He said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what his story is going to be. You be faithful to me. You're accountable to me, and what happens to John doesn't make a difference for you. And so then there's this false assumption that starts going out amongst the church, which is this: then went this saying abroad among the brethren, that disciple should not die. Yet Jesus said not unto him, he shall not die. But if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? So it was an if statement, but the church misinterpreted that. And really, for the last 2,000 years, the church has always had this idea of the imminence of the rapture, which I don't think is a biblical view. When you really start looking into it, you see that there's prerequisites to the rapture. There are things that have to happen before the rapture happens. That's just the way that it is. And I'll give you a quick one. Matthew 24:14. This is one of the prerequisites for the rapture. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. And then here we're talking about the abomination of desolation. The gospel has to go forth to all the nations first. And we're not there yet. The gospel has not gone forth to all the nations. There's one particular island in the Indian Ocean that I keep an eye on. There's a tribe there that's very primitive. They hate outsiders. They kill pretty much anyone who tries to make it to the island. Some Christian missionaries have tried to take the gospel there and have been killed or repulsed. The gospel hasn't gone out to all the nations yet, so we're not there yet. That prerequisite has not been met. And since that prerequisite has not been met, the rapture cannot happen at any old time. Let's go back to 1 Thessalonians. So the early church had this idea in mind that Christ was going to return within a lifetime of the events that are recorded in the Gospels. All right, and because of that, they were looking around. They were seeing the older believers dying off from old age, and that was very discouraging to them. They were thinking, well, these folks they're missing out. They're gonna be they're not going to see these things. They're going to miss out on the resurrection. And so here in 1 Thessalonians we see this: but I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep. That's a euphemism for death. So the saints that are already dead, that you sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. In other words, Jesus died and rose again. God's able to resurrect these ones as well. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. Alright, so there is a catching up of the saints. The word rapture doesn't get used in the scriptures, but there most definitely is a catching up of the saints, meeting the Lord in the air. And then, when this epistle was written, it resulted in even more misconceptions and false assumptions on the part of the church. They began to think that like I said, imminence of the rapture, that it could happen at any time. And to dispel that particular false view, we have 2 Thessalonians, which gives us even more context on this passage in 1 Thessalonians. And here we go. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So this is a reference to the abomination of desolation that the Antichrist is going to commit in the end times, going into a rebuilt temple and claiming to be God. And so this is saying, though, don't be deceived. Don't get any misunderstanding of the words we're writing to you or the previous epistle. Um, don't be mistaken in thinking that the day of Christ is at hand. Uh, there's prerequisites for it. The Antichrist has to be revealed first, and by extension, the abomination of desolation has to happen first. Prerequisites for the rapture, and I have another video about that, prerequisites to the rapture, that you can take a look at if you're interested in these things. Alright, but there is most definitely going to be a rapture, or a catching up of the saints. Or in this passage here, they're gathering together unto him, and we will meet him in the air. And this is not the same as the second coming, where Christ comes back, slays all his enemies with the sword of his mouth, and establishes a kingdom on earth. I guess maybe I should have pulled out some of the chronology of the events of Revelation to give a little bit more detail on this. But long story short, I believe that the rapture is a mid-tribulation rapture occurring here, and the second coming is a separate event that happens at the end of the tribulation. What happens during this 3.5 years? Well, basically, the Antichrist is ruling on the earth, and God's dispensing judgment. That's where all these judgments are being rained down, because the saints are gone. Now, once the rapture takes place, there's the 144,000 virgin men who are Jewish, and they're the tribes of Israel, and they're all sealed. Why do they need that seal? Because all these judgments from God are raining down on the wicked earth, and the seal protects them from those judgments. And there's probably more than 144,000. I believe in Revelation we see that they're men, and they are virgins. There's a reason for that. So there are most likely women as well. But what happens there is it's a figure of what happened with the Exodus and the wilderness wanderings, where God takes his people out, and then he's bringing them into the promised land, which is what comes after the tribulation, the 1,000-year millennial kingdom. But in order to do that, the people have to be purified. And so all those who have tainted and corrupted themselves with fornication and with other disqualifying sins aren't going to make it. They're not going to see the kingdom of God. Which is why there's all these verses in the scriptures about, murderers, adulterers, fornicators, whoremongers, liars, the fearful, and all this other stuff. There's all these disqualifiers that those who disqualify themselves through various things, they're not going to make it through the tribulation. They might even be believers, but they'll be killed off by persecution, and so forth. It's the sealed who haven't tainted themselves who will come through the tribulation period, and those will be the people that are living on the earth while the resurrected saints are Christ's government. And actually we can take a look. I believe it's Revelation 20 that these things are talked about. Okay. Yeah. Laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. And that's the 1,000-year millennial kingdom of Christ. And we see quite clearly that it hasn't happened yet. I see this as well. People saying, well, the millennial kingdom already came and went. No, it didn't. We're going to be living in a renewed earth. The animal kingdom will no longer be carnivorous. This is the time period that the Bible talks about where, a little kid will be able to play on the den of a poisonous serpent without fear of getting bitten. Predators will lie down with prey animals, and there's not going to be any killing or death in the animal kingdom. There's not going to be killing in the animal kingdom anymore. Nature is going to sort of be renewed. The earth's going to be renewed from the curse. What you're going to have is humanity, who are still have a sin nature. They're going to have a perfect government because it's going to be Jesus Christ's government, and made up of the perfected, resurrected saints. So the government's going to be perfect, and the earth is going to be renewed. Now, this is still not the new heaven and the new earth that are going to be remade after the old heavens and earth are destroyed. But it is going to be a renewed earth. It's going to be much more like the environment after creation. And this is God's way of demonstrating that you can put sinful human beings with a sin nature into a perfect environment. They can have a perfect government, an environment where there's no crime and so forth, and they're still going to be sinners. At the end of the 1,000 years, Satan's going to be loosed, and he's going to be able to deceive these nations who have harbored rebellion in their hearts. But this is just going to be a little blip. It's not even going to be a real war. They're going to rise up, and fire is going to come down from God out of heaven and destroy them all. It's not even a seriously noteworthy insurrection. And it makes sense because the Bible says that once Christ assumes the throne, there's no end to his reign. There's no end to his kingdom or his government. He's not going to lose the throne ever again once it's consummated, once he takes it. So this rebellion, it's not gonna shake or rattle Christ's authority, power, or reign in the slightest. Alright, so we might be getting off on, all this stuff relates, so I don't know that it's really rabbit trails per se, but I want to give you guys some framework for understanding this stuff. And so this is why I'm saying that the rapture is not going to happen for the rest of this year. It's not going to happen in 2026, 2027, or 2028. So that's 3 years and, a couple months. Why can I say that with certainty? Well, because it's going to be a mid-tribulation rapture. And so it's still, at least, since this event hasn't happened yet, the taking away of the daily sacrifices, we're not even into the tribulation yet. Therefore, we know it's going to be at least 3.5 years until the rapture takes place. So let's talk about this a little bit, because there's all these prerequisites that have to happen. Let's just list them out a little bit. Well, in order for the daily sacrifices to be taken away, the daily sacrifices have to be brought back, right? And we're seeing things to that effect going on now. So this daily sacrifices have to be brought back. That has to happen before the tribulation. The temple has to be rebuilt. That is part of the sacrificial system that's going to be brought back. And by the way, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Christians are participating in this system or anything like that. Our sacrifice is Jesus Christ. And we don't need any more sacrifices. So there's a couple different ways to look at it. I think the way that I see it right now is that Israel is going to be kind of trying to get back to God, but on their own terms. And that's why they're bringing back the daily sacrifices and the whole temple system. Completely unnecessary, but it does show that they're trying, on their own terms anyway, to get back to God. But the real revival isn't actually going to happen until after the rapture. At that point, it's going to be very obvious to people what's going on, and I think a lot of people are going to be saved, especially Israelites at that point, when they really become aware of what is going on. The spiritual blindness is going to be lifted to a large extent. The Bible is quite clear that God's not done with Israel yet. Now, I know the Jews are kind of a hot topic and a little bit controversial right now, Let me just put it this way. There's two Zions, okay? There's a Zion that human beings are trying to build through human effort. And then there's Zion, the spiritual kingdom, that God is building through his own power. And people have tried to take that spiritual kingdom and hijack it and bring it about their own way, and remold it into their own image, if that makes sense. And that's all I'm really going to say about that, I guess, for now. But you can see that there's these prerequisites. And then we already talked about Matthew 24:14. The gospel has to go forth to all the nations. I've made other videos on prerequisites to the rapture. But once we hit this point where, and by the way, all this stuff is ongoing. I've made videos about the red heifers that were moved to Israel and pastured there, and that's the reason Hamas launched the October attacks. And then they performed the red heifer ceremony and got those ashes. The ashes of a previous 9 red heifers were recovered in the Qumran caves, along with the Dead Sea Scrolls. So now they have the ashes of 10 red heifers, this lineage of red heifer ashes that they can use for this purification ritual and so forth. They're doing all that stuff because they're getting ready to rebuild the temple. They're getting ready to bring back the daily sacrifices, but it hasn't happened yet. And I've made another video about how I think that the original temple site may have been in the city of David and not actually the Temple Mount area. And so it may be possible for them to rebuild the temple without destroying the Dome of the Rock and building on the Temple Mount, the so-called Temple Mount. And in fact, I believe that they may already have the temple rebuilt and they're just waiting to unveil it to the world. They're just going to say, well, it's further south. It's there in the city of David. We've been building it all along in secret, and here it is. I don't know. We'll see when we see. But we're getting close to that stuff because they're doing the red heifer ceremonies. They're at least rehearsing for them. But then there are some people who are saying that no, the red heifer ceremony that was performed satisfies all the requirements. You got to understand, though, that the Jewish religious groups are not unified at all. So there's all this infighting, wrangling over doctrine and doctrines of men and interpretations of the law and all this other stuff. And that's just the way it is. It's kind of pretty chaotic. So let's talk about something else, because this is really interesting. A lot of people don't know this. Freemasonry. What is the purpose of Freemasonry? Well, it's all about rebuilding the Royal Arch. So let's talk about this. So, Freemasonry is a container that allows certain things to exist in Christianized society that otherwise could not exist. Basically what it is, it's a system of Luciferian mystery religion. But there's many different rites within Freemasonry and many different degrees within Freemasonry. It's a system of sort of achievements and qualifications that unlock further secrets within the system. And it's really a system built on lies, deception, concealing the truth. It's very, well, Luciferian. It's very satanic. It's exactly the kind of secretive system that you would expect the father of lies, Satan, to create. It's kind of like Satan's church. Hidden in plain sight. Masonic lodges all over the place. Go do a search sometime and see where your nearest Masonic lodge is. They're all over the place. Now, there's 2 rites, the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. There are 2 of they're very old, they're very powerful, they're very influential, they have ties to the royal families, to these royal bloodlines. We've already talked, well, maybe we haven't. Anyway, Lord willing, I'll be doing a video on this, how the royal bloodlines may be Nephilim descendants. Have ties to these fallen angel bloodlines. But anyway, both of these rites, the Scottish Rite and the York Rite, have a Royal Arch degree. And this is really the point where Freemason becomes a real Freemason in a sense. They're told what the purpose of Freemasonry is, and they are told the name of Freemasonry is God. And then they're also told about what the Royal Arch is. Alright, so let's break this down. And by the way, this is something very interesting that I'll just mention in passing. Donald Trump is most likely a Scottish Rite Freemason. One of his longtime mentors and pastors, a high-level Scottish Rite Freemason, and Donald Trump has studied the Kabbalah, which is something that Freemasons or other occultists would do. It's not something that Christians generally are going to do. And one of Trump's books admitted that he had specifically a tutor in the Kabbalah. Anyway, that's just an aside. So what is the Royal Arch degree and what is the Royal Arch? Well, the Royal Arch degree, and it's a different level. It's in the Scottish Rite and in the York Rite. It's a little bit different. These are paths of progression within Freemasonry, but there are different paths to get into the upper echelons. All right. So during the rituals for the Royal Arch degree, the Freemason learns the name of Freemasonry's God, and it's not Jesus. The name is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. I've only ever read it in a book. It's Jabalun, and it's 3 syllables. It's taken from Jah or Yah, J-A-H, part of the name of the real God, the God of the Bible. Okay, so far so good. Then there's Baal, B-A-L. That's a reference to, the Canaanite god that accepted human sacrifices and stuff, Baal. And then On is the sacred city of Osiris. This is a god that it's not the God of the Bible. Let's just put it that way. So that's the name of the god of Freemasonry, Jabalun. It's really Satan. Freemasons believe that Lucifer is a righteous being and that he is a benefactor and a patron to humanity and an intermediary between humanity and higher angels. So they believe that Lucifer is a good guy. And so Freemasons will often separate Satan from Lucifer. Lucifer's a good angel in Freemasonry. Satan, I guess they still believe in a devil. I'm not real 100% sure on that one way or another. But if you see people separating out Lucifer from Satan, they're the same entity, right? But these occult traditions will try to separate them into different entities. Really, both of those are titles. Satan means the adversary. Lucifer means the brighter, shining one. And we've talked about this before in other videos, that Satan appeals to people where they're at. Some people like the dark and debauched. Some people like the Enlightenment mystery religion side of things. Lucifer appeals to those who are very religious, pious, righteous, who love rituals, who love, enlightenment and religious systems. Satan appeals to more the dark, debauched, lawless side of things. Same entity. Satan operates on that dark light spectrum. So what is the Royal Arch? Well, the entire purpose of Freemasonry is to rebuild the Royal Arch. And Freemasonry has always had ties to the British royal family. Regardless of whether they are actually a Freemason or not, the head of Freemasonry is the British Crown. Whoever the British monarch is, they are the de facto head of Freemasonry. Now, a lot of British royals are actually Freemasons who have worked their way up through the Brotherhood themselves. So what's the Royal Arch? Well, the purpose of Freemasonry is to rebuild the Royal Arch, and the Royal Arch is a code word for a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. Freemasonry is essentially a helper organization that is to assist religious Judaism in rebuilding the temple, but it's a system for non-Jews, essentially. And this just ties in with history and all this other stuff. I'm not going to go into all the extreme details on this stuff, but I hope you can kind of see how Freemasonry is part of the Unitarian mystery religion system that does include Islam, Roman Catholicism, Judaism, and many secret societies. It's just this whole Luciferian system that eventually is all going to be merged into one. I guess you could call it the OWO Church, the One World Order Church of the Antichrist. Coming soon. So let's talk about this, because I said something that some of you probably choked a little at because you've been taught a particular interpretation of prophecy. I said that once this event starts that begins the tribulation, we can know to the day when the rapture will happen, because this blessed event is the rapture. I am pretty certain. And you're probably going to say, well, there's that verse in the Bible where Jesus says that no one can know the timing. Son, man, Father. Here we go. Mark 13:32. This verse is real interesting for a lot of reasons. Maybe even for some reasons that you never thought about before. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven. Okay, so the sons of God, the angels, they don't know. Neither the Son doesn't know either, but the Father. So the Father's the only one that knows the timing of these events. Well, what does that mean? Well, firstly, let's talk about an elephant in the room. This does mean that Jesus did not have omniscience during his earthly life. Okay? Because he says right here, the Son doesn't know the timing of these things. The Father does, the Son does not. And this goes along with, the Bible's pretty clear that Jesus emptied himself of some of his divine attributes during his earthly life. He wasn't omnipresent anymore. He wasn't omniscient, all-knowing anymore. The Bible tells us that he grew in wisdom and stature. That is a miraculous thing that's hard to wrap our mind around. God in the flesh, Jesus the Christ, had to learn stuff. And he learned things in accordance with the Father's will. So there were things that were sealed that he didn't know during his earthly life. And what do I mean when I say that there were things that were sealed? Well, let's look at this in the book of Daniel. We're getting to the end of this video, Lord willing, because my voice is starting to give out, so we've got to be getting to the end. Okay. And I heard, this is Daniel speaking, but I understood not, and then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? What's the outcome? What's going on here? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And then he goes on to give the timing. So this person who's giving the timing clearly knows the timing. He does know the day. But then we have Jesus during his lifetime saying that no one knows the day, only the Father. So what's going on here? And then we see here the sealing. So let's talk about the sealing first. There are some truths, some prophetic truths that are sealed and closed up until the time of the end, which I do believe that we are now in the time of the end. We're living in the lead up to the tribulation right now. And many things have been unsealed for us that were not unsealed for previous ages, for thousands of years prior. Things that prophets tried to search out and weren't able to because they're sealed up. And in this context, this person giving revelation to Daniel actually tells him, go thy way. He's basically saying, give it a rest, Daniel. These things are closed up and sealed. You're not going to know them. They're not for you. But then he goes on to give him a comfort, and he says, go thy way. Go mind your own business, Daniel, till the end be. But don't worry about it. You're my child. It's all good for you. Thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So don't worry about it. There are some things that are sealed. Those things will be unsealed for the end times believers. That's us today. But you can't understand them right now. And by the way, some of those things were still sealed during the life of Christ, which is why Christ didn't know. His disciples asked him, and he told them that he didn't know the timing, because it was still sealed at that point in time. Really, for the last 2,000 years, the church has been thinking that the rapture could happen at any moment, which has not been true. And it never was true, but they were thinking that based on some false assumptions and based on the reality that the timing and some of these revelations were sealed till the time of the end, which hadn't happened yet. So who is this person that's giving the revelations to Daniel? Well, this is real interesting. When you start digging through here's something else that's interesting. I just saw it, so I'm going to mention it real quick. A time, times, and half. Well, replace time with year. 1 year, then times 2 years and a half. How much does that make all added together? 3.5 years. So that's interesting. But anyway, yeah, as Daniel is having these visions and revelations given to him, all right, there's these two messengers, one standing on one side of the river, one standing on the other side of the river. And the one that's giving him the revelations is standing on the waters, in the middle of the river. Who is this man clothed in linen, who's standing on the waters in the middle of the river? Well, in the scriptures, standing on the waters is a divine attribute. It means that this is God. This is a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ who's giving him these revelations. And we don't have to guess about that or be confused about that, because if you rewind in Daniel and go back to where this man is first revealed, the description of him is the same as the description of Jesus Christ. In Revelation. Yeah, here we go. Daniel 10. I'm going to read this because this is awesome. In the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel, then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with the fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. This is Jesus. This is a pre-incarnate Christ who is giving Daniel the revelation of his visions. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that Jesus has never been idle, all right? We see from the beginning of John, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. Everything was made by him. Jesus, the Christ, was active at creation. And from creation until he had his earthly lifetime, he was active, and we see in Daniel what some of those activities were. We see that Jesus is fighting alongside these godly principalities. Michael, for example, Michael the archangel, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. Now some cults and some sects believe that Michael is Jesus. That's not the case, because Jesus and Michael are working together fighting against these other evil principalities that have rebelled against God. Michael is one of the sons of God. He's probably a watcher. Watchers are a particular class of, angel is a bit of a misnomer. I'll just call them angels in this video for the sake of simplicity, but a class of sons of God, spiritual being, that are given charge over nations. And what they were told to do is sort of to govern or watch over those nations and guide them in the laws that in God's laws. But a lot of these watchers then rebelled, began accepting worship as gods themselves, and led humanity astray, and was giving humanity restricted information. And all this stuff's laid out in the books of Enoch. The Bible does talk about watchers, and it even uses the word watcher in some cases here and there. But here we see Michael. He's the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. This is the Jewish nation. Well, let me see. Daniel. Yeah, I guess we could call them that. The Israelites, the Jewish nation, the Hebrews, whatever you want to call them. There's a little bit of distinction there too, by the way. Jews technically are, I think, descendants of the tribe of Judah. But anyway, the Israelites. Michael is the great prince which standeth for them. So he's not human. And a lot of these angels, by the way, have an L ending to their names. That's not to say, so Daniel does too, but he's a human. But like Michael, Gabriel, in some of these extra biblical books, you have like Azazel and Azrael and all these other. The L ending is a common ending of angelic names. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, Michael is one of the sons of God. He's faithful, and he's going to be faithful to the end, which is why I don't know if he was always the archangel. Maybe he was, and maybe that's why he was given a principality over God's people, because he's the chief of whatever his class of angels is. I personally think that he's one of the watchers, but one that remained faithful to God instead of being in rebellion. But I'm not going to get off on that rabbit trail except to say, Genesis 6, the sons of God, these being, according to the book of Enoch, watchers, spiritual beings, angels that intermingled with humanity. That's your royal bloodlines today. Royal, Re-El, King God is literally what that means. So the royal bloodlines down through history have had these Nephilim or fallen angel bloodlines and these special abilities and sometimes demonic attachments that came with that. And then you see in the ancient world these kings and emperors and pharaohs claiming to be gods or claiming to be part God or intermediaries between God and the people, the gods and the people. Anyway. So, Jesus, before his earthly lifetime, he knew the timing of the end. During his earthly lifetime, he didn't, because he'd emptied himself of some of his divine attributes. And now that he's back in his glorified form, seated by God's throne in the heavenlies, I'm certain at this point that he does know the timing of the end now. And a lot of people use that verse. Let's see, what was it? Son, Father, man. There we go. Mark. Let's pull this up again. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. What does this say? Let's just really carefully look at what this verse actually says. It just says that at this particular time that Jesus says this, no man knows, no angel knows, and the Son doesn't know. Only the Father knows. But this verse doesn't say that no one would ever know. At some point in the future, I mean, at the very least, once we get to the point where these things do come to pass, people will know that it happened. So taking this verse and just twisting it to mean that no one can know or no one ever will know, that's a false interpretation. That's a private interpretation. That's a private interpretation that a lot of us have been taught in the churches. I've largely grown up in Baptist churches, and I was always taught the understanding that this just means we can't know the timing of the end, but that's not correct. These things were sealed at the time that this was spoken. They're not sealed anymore. And so for this reason, we need to carefully study the scriptures for ourselves and put these pieces together, because we do have these pairs of events like we saw in Daniel there, where the Bible literally tells us that this event is going to come before this event. So we have 2 Thessalonians that before the rapture, the Antichrist being revealed is going to happen. and the abomination of desolation. So that's a pair of events. Then in the last chapter of Daniel, we see that the ceasing or taking away of the daily sacrifices happens before the abomination of desolation. That's another pair of events. By putting these pairs of events together, we can get a chronology. Now, right now, we still don't know the day. But once the daily sacrifices are brought back, once the temple is rebuilt, once the gospel witness has gone out to all the world, then we're eligible for this event to happen, the ceasing of the daily sacrifices. And then once that happens, the time clock starts running, and we can know to the day when the rapture will take place, and that's important. Shortened flesh. I want to show you something, yeah. Let me read these two verses for you. These are parallels from two different Gospels. Except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Let's talk about this time period. The 45 days. What's happening here in the 45 days? Well, the Antichrist is in power on the earth, and the elect, the saints, are being hunted down and exterminated like animals during this period. This is what the Bible calls the time of Jacob's trouble, I believe is one word for it. This is actually one of the little seasons, and I want to show you this very clearly because this is another false teaching. Little season. So I'm using, this e-sword uses the Cambridge Pure Text King James, okay? When we search little season, we get two hits in Revelation, and these are actually referring to two different periods of time. If you have been taught that there's only one Satan's little season, that is a false interpretation. That's another private interpretation that's part of this doctrinal package deal that was put together 150 years ago and has been repeated ad nauseum in the churches, and that is incorrect. There's two little seasons. The term little season actually just means like a little while, and so it's not necessarily a specific, it's just saying a short period of time. One of the little seasons happens at the end of the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ. So we're definitely not in that little season. And that's the time period where Satan must be loose for a little while to go out and deceive the nations, and then there will be that last final little mini rebellion, if you want to call it that God just wipes out pretty much instantly with flames from heaven. Okay? We just saw that in Revelation 20. So that's one little season. And then there's another little season. A little season where the saints are being killed. Another little season that has to be fulfilled. And that is this little season. That's the 45 days. And I think this is why the Lord lays out the timeline specifically so we can know to the day. Because this is going to be a rough ride. Now, really all of this period, the 3.5 and the 45 days, Christian persecution is going to keep ramping up until Christians are reviled and hated by society and life is difficult and miserable. And the 45 days is where, okay, the abomination of desolation, Antichrist goes into the temple, claims to be God, and the Christians are like, nope, not buying it, pal. But he rules the world at this point. And so he's going to take all the forces and use them against saints. And this is why the Bible talks about having to, survive in the wilderness. Think about all the resources that the world system has at its disposal. Tracking dogs, drones, thermal imaging, satellites, planes, helicopters, special forces, kill teams. All this stuff is going to be used to hunt down the saints. And this is why the scriptures say, if it weren't for the Lord cutting that time short, shortened flesh is what I search for here. Except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Um, yeah, it's going to be a rough ride. And those who endure to the end will be saved. That is a verse as well. I don't remember the. Yeah. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Because what's going to happen? These these years and this time period, it's going to be a refining fire. It's going to be horrible. If you're not a real believer, you're not going to make it through. You're not going to be, right now we live in a Christianized society where everyone's a Christian. And, you have these OnlyFans girls wearing like Christian crosses and stuff like that. And it's just complete double standard. No one knows what they're talking about. They have a form of Christian culture, and they think that makes them a believer. Not the case. Being a Christian is popular. Being a Christian is trendy. Wearing a cross is cool. It's not going to be like that during the tribulation. Your life is going to be forfeit according to the world system, and you're going to be hunted down and treated like an animal and beheaded. Possibly using, one of these smart guillotines that has facial recognition and electronic guillotines like the one, Chanel built prototypes of. Yeah, go look that up. That's some pretty wild stuff if you've never looked into that before. And so it's going to really separate the wheat from the tares, so to speak, when the fires of persecution descend. Yeah, and unless that time was shortened, the devil and his forces would definitely wipe out all the saints. And that's why the Lord's going to shorten these days, 45 days. And we're given the days so that we can count them down. Once it happens, we'll know. Once you see the abomination of desolation, you could start counting here once the start of the 7-year tribulation kicks off. But really, once you see the abomination of desolation as a believer, you'll know, okay, we're counting down the 45 days and we've got to endure. Now, we might get hunted down and captured and cornered. And in that case, you're going to have to endure in a spiritual sense. You don't deny Christ before men, because if you do, he's going to deny you before the Father. You're going to have to die for your faith, and they might try to torture you to death, get you to recant. It's been done before. Go read Fox's Book of Martyrs and the horrible, horrible things that the world system has done to believers, trying to get them to give up their faith. Horrible stuff. Stuff I'm not even going to talk about. Makes me sick to think about. And understand too that Days of Noah level stuff, where we're having more Nephilim descended creatures being active and operating openly in society, this might be a period where believers are being hunted by things like cryptids that have been trained by the world government for the purpose, like werewolves and dogmen being used as tracking animals. And that's, I know it sounds crazy to even think about, but it's a very real possibility. Actually, I'm pretty certain that it's going to happen. The Bible does talk about some other things too, though. There comes a point where the Bible says that there's going to be these periods where God's people do exploits. And here's my thought on that. So I'm a guy who loves guns, and I'm very much an American. I wrestle with this sometimes because I am primarily called to be, as a Christian, a citizen of heaven, of God's kingdom. That's where my citizenship lies. But I love America, or I should say at least that I love the values that made this country great once. And I like guns. I like my Second Amendment rights. And I have no intention of, we hit a point where one world order Antichrist worshipping Muppets have taken the mark of the beast, they already forfeited their souls. And they're going to be rounding up Christian men, women, and children and trying to exterminate them. I don't think I'm going to sit around and take that lying down, so to speak. You know, I think me and my battle rifle are going to have something to say about that. And I don't really have a problem killing Satan's forces if they're going to be trying to prey on the innocent. Let's just put it that way. And the Bible does say that there are going to be times ahead where God's people are going to be strengthened by him to do exploits. What exactly that means, the scriptures aren't clear about. But understand that if we're in this world where the Antichrist army is made up of these demonic creatures and stuff that are hunting people down, as a Christian man, you have a responsibility to be a protector of the innocent. And there might actually be some physical warfare involved in some of these days that are coming. Because spiritual warfare is primarily what we're called to do, but sometimes it gets physical. That's just the way this world works. And, well, I think I've covered all this stuff fairly well. I think I've laid it all out, and I've given the scriptures. I hope this has been useful to you. God bless, and I'll talk to you next time. I'm losing my voice here. I have several more videos I need to do, but maybe I'll have to wait till another day or what have you. But anyway, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good one. Bye.